Hello everyone. Tonight we dive into something that may change the way you look at the sky forever. What if I told you that every strange signal, every vanished mission, every carving in stone, and even something hidden in your own DNA, all points to one terrifying truth? A secret civilization on Mars may already be watching us, counting down to the moment they finally reveal themselves. So set your pillow and blanket, relax your mind, and let the shadows of this mystery sink in. But before we start, if you genuinely like my work, please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments what time you're watching this video. The universe, they say, is silent. Stars burn, galaxies spin, black holes tear the very fabric of space apart, and yet across billions of light years, we hear nothing. Our telescopes, vast ears of metal and glass, stretch upward into the night sky, listening for whispers that never come. For more than half a century, humanity has waited for a message, proof that we are not alone. But the skies remained stubbornly quiet, until one night, they weren't. That night, buried deep within the static, something emerged. It was faint, fragile, the kind of anomaly that should have been lost in the noise, but it wasn't. It was a pulse, repeating, persistent, a signal, and it was coming from Mars. The first person to notice it wasn't a government official or a well-funded NASA scientist. It was a man few outside his field had ever heard of, a cryptographer hired by an observatory in Europe to analyze complex data streams. His job, usually tedious, was to sift through meaningless noise to make sure nothing important slipped through. On that night, his trained eye noticed something others dismissed. The signal, barely audible over the background hiss of the cosmos, repeated with mathematical precision. At first glance it seemed trivial, but when plotted, the rhythm revealed itself. Prime numbers 1, 3, 5, 7, 11, marching forward, ordered, deliberate. This was not cosmic chance. This was intelligence. Prime numbers are universal. They don't belong to a language or culture. They are the foundation of mathematics itself. If you wanted to communicate with an unknown intelligence, primes would be your opening line, the way to say, "I exist, I am thinking, I am here." But why would such a message come from Mars? A world humanity has long believed to be barren, lifeless, nothing more than frozen deserts and dry canyons. Unless, of course, Mars wasn't lifeless at all. Unless something or someone was already there. The cryptographer's notes reveal his unease. At first he thought he had made a mistake, that the telescope had picked up interference from Earth. But no, the signal's point of origin was clear. It came from a narrow stretch of Martian terrain, a place long regarded as geologically unremarkable. The signal was short, but it wasn't alone. Night after night, fragments appeared. Some were faint, others stronger, but all repeated in cycles, like the beating of an unseen heart. The scientist began to map them obsessively, scribbling lines of numbers across notebooks, building diagrams, graphs. What he saw forming wasn't random. The pulses grew longer, then shorter, as though following a progression. The pattern shifted slightly each cycle, like steps in a sequence. He wondered, was it counting down to something? For weeks he worked in secret. His colleagues, when told, brushed him aside. They insisted it was interference, the kind of anomaly anyone who worked with radio signals encountered often. But he knew, he could feel it in the pit of his stomach. This was no anomaly. It was intentional. And then, as if to confirm his dread, something extraordinary happened. When he graphed the pulses on a visual axis, the pattern created a spiral, not just any spiral, but a perfect repeating curve, eerily reminiscent of the Fibonacci sequence, the mathematical spiral found in seashells, hurricanes, galaxies, and the very structure of DNA. The universe itself seemed to echo in the design, but this spiral was not natural. It was being transmitted. It was a message encoded in the rhythm of the cosmos. He attempted to share his findings. He wrote papers, emailed trusted colleagues, even prepared a small presentation for his observatory's director. But within days, everything changed. His access to telescope logs was revoked. His files were wiped. His notes when he returned to his office were gone. His emails bounced back as undeliverable. The official explanation was simple. Equipment malfunction, solar interference, case closed. He protested, but his protests fell on deaf ears. Within weeks his contract was quietly terminated. Soon after he disappeared. Those who knew him described a man increasingly paranoid in his final months. He claimed he was being followed, his phone tapped, his movements tracked. He confided in one friend that he believed his apartment had been searched, his hard drives copied. Whether these fears were the product of obsession, or whether they were real, no one can say. What is known is that after a final frantic email sent to a fellow cryptographer, in which he wrote simply, "They are here. Do not trust the silence," he was never heard from again. Officially, nothing unusual ever happened. The observatory logs show no anomaly, no signal, no interruption. But unofficially, the whispers began. Amateur astronomers, those who spent their nights with home-built equipment and backyard telescopes, began reporting strange bursts of radio static, sudden pulses of repeating noise. They too dismissed them at first, but when compared, the bursts matched. Different people, different locations, all hearing the same strange rhythm. It was never strong, never long, but always there, pulsing, waiting, and always it came from the same place, Mars. Mars. The planet we thought we knew so well, the planet humanity has been studying for decades, sending probes, orbiters, and rovers across its scarred and dusty surface. Yet, what have those machines shown us? Really, vast deserts, endless canyons, volcanoes so large they dwarf anything on Earth. But beneath the dust, beneath the rock, what lies hidden? Could something be alive there still? Could a civilization, perhaps long buried, still linger in the shadows, sending signals into the void? There is one detail few discuss. Buried in declassified documents that slipped into the public domain. Decades ago, in the 1970s, NASA's Viking mission conducted experiments on the Martian soil. The results suggested chemical reactions that looked suspiciously like signs of life. At first, excitement surged, but then, quietly, the findings were downplayed, dismissed as anomalies. Once again, the silence returned. But what if those early results were not anomalies at all? What if they were the first whispers, the first clues that Mars was not as dead as we were told? The intercepted transmission seemed to confirm what those faint traces hinted at. And yet, no one dared to acknowledge it. To admit the truth would be to shatter everything we believe about our place in the cosmos. If Mars holds intelligent life, if it is capable of broadcasting mathematical messages across space, then we are not alone. Worse, we are not the first. Humanity, for all its power, may not be the dominant intelligence in our own solar system. The thought is terrifying. Perhaps that is why the truth was buried. Still, fragments of the cryptographer's notes survived. Scans of pages, scribbled with numbers, leaked online years later. Most dismissed them as hoaxes, but to those who studied them closely, something chilling emerged. The spiral pattern, when layered over topographic maps of Mars, aligned with strange formations near the base of Olympus Mons, the largest volcano in the solar system. Coincidence? Perhaps, but the alignment was too precise to ignore. How could a radio transmission form a shape that matched a physical location on Mars, unless the message wasn't just a signal, unless it was a map? The implications are staggering. If the spiral pointed to a location on Mars, then perhaps it was a beacon, a marker, even a warning. Could something beneath Olympus Mons, some vast underground structure hidden for eons, be the true source of the signal? And if so, what was it trying to say? Was it calling out to us, inviting us to discover its secrets? Or was it sending a message to someone else entirely, never meant for human ears? The deeper you stare into the mystery, the darker it becomes. If there is intelligence on Mars, if it has been there all along, then why reveal itself now? Why send signals after centuries of silence? Perhaps it is not a revelation at all. Perhaps it is a preparation. Could this be the first step, not of contact, but of conquest? The questions pile endlessly. Was the cryptographer silenced because he uncovered the truth? Did governments know more than they revealed, choosing to bury the evidence to avoid panic? And if the signal was a countdown, what happens when it ends? Tonight, as you look at the red glow of Mars hanging in the night sky, ask yourself, what if the silence we've always trusted is nothing more than a mask? What if something waits beneath the dust, patient and ancient, watching us? And what if the signal we intercepted, the faint, fragile heartbeat from the void, was not a greeting at all, but a warning? Because if Mars is speaking, then the only question that remains is this: what will it say next? For centuries, Olympus Mons has stood as one of the greatest mysteries in our solar system. Rising more than 70,000 feet above the barren Martian plains, it is the largest volcano known to man, 3 times taller than Mount Everest, wide enough to cover an entire country. From orbit, it dominates the horizon, a mountain so vast that if you stood upon its slopes, you would never see the peak. Scientists have studied it for decades, marveling at its size, speculating on its age, but always concluding the same thing: it is dead, a relic of a violent past, frozen in silence, resting upon a lifeless world. But recent discoveries suggest Olympus Mons may not be as silent as we once believed. The story begins with satellite scans, high-resolution sweeps taken by orbiters that circle Mars endlessly, mapping every crack and canyon. For years, most of the images were routine: dust storms, rocky plains, dunes stretching across a crimson horizon. But one series of scans conducted near the base of Olympus Mons revealed something that defied explanation. Beneath the surface, buried under layers of hardened lava and ancient rock, lay structures. They were geometric, too precise to be the work of chance. Angles and corridors, long tunnels stretching in parallel lines, patterns that mirrored the blueprints of cities, not the randomness of nature. When the images first appeared in raw data streams, scientists were stunned. Some believed they were artifacts of imaging errors, tricks of shadow and light. But as more scans came in, the anomalies persisted. Whatever lay beneath Olympus Mons was vast, interconnected and deliberate. It was not a single chamber or cavern, but a network, structures layered atop one another, spreading outward like the roots of some colossal tree. And it was deep, deeper than any natural cave system ever recorded. It was, by all appearances, built. The findings never reached the public. Almost immediately, the data was classified. Access to the original scans was restricted to a handful of officials. Even the scientists who had first identified the anomalies were told to stop their work. Official statements brushed aside the findings as geological formations, misinterpretations of natural rock layers, but not everyone was convinced. Some of the original images, saved before the lockdown, found their way out, and those leaked photographs told a far darker story. In the leaked images, faint outlines could be seen beneath the volcanic crust, grids of straight lines, perfect 90-degree angles, repeating formations that bore an eerie resemblance to streets, walls, even towers. One structure appeared circular, like a dome surrounded by evenly spaced outcroppings. Another showed a cluster of rectangular voids, aligned with uncanny precision, like the foundations of ancient buildings. Taken together, the patterns were unmistakable. They looked like the ruins of a city, an ancient metropolis buried beneath the Martian soil. The question then was unavoidable: who built it? If Mars was truly lifeless, if it had always been nothing more than a frozen desert, then the structures were impossible. Yet here they were, undeniable, staring back from the images. Some suggested they were remnants of a lost Martian civilization, a people who once thrived when the planet was warm and blue, before its rivers dried and its atmosphere was stripped away. Others proposed a more chilling theory that they were not remnants at all, but functional, that deep beneath Olympus Mons, shielded by miles of volcanic rock, something still lived. The idea of underground life on Mars is not as far-fetched as it sounds. Scientists have long speculated that if life existed there, it would survive below the surface, protected from the harsh radiation that scours the planet. Subterranean lakes of briny water have already been detected near the poles, locked beneath layers of ice. Could it be that more advanced life had not only survived underground, but built entire cities to endure? And if that is true, then perhaps we are not just looking at ruins. Perhaps we are looking at homes. The leaked images spread quickly through underground forums and conspiracy circles. Most people dismissed them as hoaxes, cleverly altered photographs designed to feed wild theories. But a few experts, those who had worked with raw satellite data, confirmed they were genuine. They insisted the patterns could not be explained by natural processes. One geologist even remarked, "If these were images of Earth, no one would hesitate to call them cities." The implication was clear. We were staring at the shadows of something extraordinary, something we were never meant to see. The timing of the leaks only deepened the mystery. Just months earlier, the story of the intercepted Martian signal, the faint transmission dismissed as static, had quietly circulated in certain scientific circles. Now, paired with the discovery of underground structures, the pieces seemed to connect. A signal, intelligent and deliberate, followed by the revelation of vast subterranean networks beneath Mars's largest volcano. Was it possible the signal had originated from there? Was Olympus Mons not just a mountain, but a fortress? As speculation grew, officials doubled down on silence. Requests for information were denied. Journalists who asked too many questions found doors closed in their faces. The leaked images vanished from many online sources, scrubbed almost as quickly as they appeared. But once something is seen, it cannot be unseen. Whispers spread of researchers being threatened, of careers ruined, of one technician who vanished not long after admitting he had copied data from the satellite archives. The pattern was clear. Someone wanted the truth buried as deeply as the structures themselves. But there was one detail that could not be erased. In one of the clearest leaked images, faint but visible, the layout of the supposed city bore a haunting resemblance to ancient ruins on Earth. Long parallel avenues, circular gathering spaces, monumental forms aligned with astronomical precision. Scholars who compared them saw echoes of Sumerian ziggurats, Mayan pyramids, even the enigmatic ruins of Petra. How could such similarities exist between two worlds separated by millions of miles? Unless the architects were connected, unless the story of humanity's beginnings was intertwined with Mars in ways we have never dared to imagine. If Mars once held cities, then who lived in them? Were they beings like us, walking on two legs, building civilizations under alien skies? Or were they something else entirely, something adapted to live in the subterranean dark, evolving far from the surface world we know? And perhaps the most unsettling question of all, what if they never left? The thought is chilling. If a civilization still thrives beneath Olympus Mons, then they are not our ancestors, not our myths. They are our neighbors, and neighbors throughout history are not always friendly. The signal intercepted years earlier may not have been a greeting. It may have been a warning, or worse, a declaration. Imagine for a moment what it would mean if officials admitted the truth. If the public were told that beneath Mars's surface lies an ancient city, possibly still inhabited, panic would ripple through every nation. Religions would fracture, economies would collapse, and military powers would scramble to respond to a potential threat that humanity is utterly unprepared to face. Perhaps that is why the silence is so carefully maintained. Perhaps that is why the discoveries are buried as quickly as they are made. And yet, the silence cannot last forever. Too many anomalies pile up. Too many images slip through the cracks. Amateur astronomers continue to report strange reflections near Olympus Mons, flashes of light that appear and vanish in patterns, too regular to be natural. Some claim to have seen shadows moving across the caldera, vast shapes that should not exist. Each report taken alone is easily dismissed, but together they weave a tapestry of possibility too disturbing to ignore. If we are staring at the ruins of a city, then we must face a terrifying possibility. Civilizations do not always remain ruins. Some endure, some hide, some wait, and if the shadows beneath Olympus Mons are not empty, then humanity has already crossed a threshold it cannot retreat from. We have been noticed. Our machines, our rovers, our satellites have drawn eyes upon us, and if that is true, then the silence of the universe may be nothing more than the pause before a storm. In the end, the question is not whether there are structures beneath Olympus Mons. The evidence, leaked and hidden though it may be, is too compelling to dismiss. The question is who built them and whether they are still alive. If they are gone, then we are staring into the graves of a lost civilization, a glimpse into a history that rewrites everything we know about life in the cosmos. But if they endure, if they are down there still, then we are not explorers standing at the edge of discovery. We are intruders standing at the gates of something vast, something ancient, something waiting in the shadows. And if that is the case, then the faint transmission we intercepted years ago was not an invitation. It was not a call. It was a reminder, a whisper in the static, telling us that we are not alone, that we never were. And as humanity stares upward at the red glow of Mars, wondering what secrets it hides, perhaps the inhabitants of those buried structures are staring back, wondering when we will finally understand the message. The silence will not hold forever. The truth cannot remain hidden beneath rock and dust. Sooner or later, something will rise from the shadows beneath Olympus Mons. The only question is whether we will be ready when it does. In the official record of space exploration, there are triumphs celebrated with fanfare and failures quietly buried in the footnotes of history. Most people can name the Apollo landings, the rovers on Mars, the probes that reached the edge of our solar system. Few, however, remember the missions that disappeared, the flights that never returned, the astronauts whose names have been erased not by chance, but by design. Among these is one mission from the 1990s, listed in archives as a routine Mars attempt, a story that ended abruptly with the word failure, a launch gone wrong, a craft lost in the void. That is the official version. But the declassified files tell another story. They whisper that the mission did not fail at all. It succeeded. The craft reached Mars, the astronauts landed, and then they vanished. The year was the mid-1990s when the world's eyes were on a new era of exploration. The Cold War was over, and with it, the space race had cooled, shifting from rivalry to uneasy collaboration. Publicly, budgets were tight, enthusiasm for space waned, and talk of manned missions to Mars seemed like distant dreams. But behind closed doors, plans continued. Documents suggest a covert initiative was launched, one that sought to send a small crew to Mars years before the public believed such technology existed. Officially, no manned mission left Earth for Mars in that decade. Unofficially, one did. The mission was said to consist of a small crew, no more than 4 men and women, handpicked not only for skill, but for loyalty, secrecy, and psychological resilience. They trained in isolation, away from the media, their existence known only to a select few officials. Their launch was disguised as a satellite deployment, hidden among the dozens of rockets fired into space every year. The world saw nothing unusual, only another plume of fire vanishing into the sky. But the capsule that left Earth that day carried not instruments but human lives. For months, silence surrounded them. No press releases, no updates, nothing to suggest the mission even existed. Then, somewhere beyond Earth's orbit, the official record claims the mission failed. A line in a report, a note that the craft lost contact, presumed destroyed, end of story. But the files that surfaced years later told otherwise. Those documents described encrypted transmissions received well beyond the point of alleged failure. For weeks after the supposed loss, signals continued, faint but clear, They were not telemetry data, but human voices, astronauts reporting on systems, on navigation, on progress. And then the words grew stranger. Descriptions of anomalies, of visual sightings outside the craft, of lights that moved against the stars, shadows where there should have been none. In one fragment, an astronaut's voice, trembling, asked, "Are we being followed?" By the time the craft reached Mars, the transmissions became more fragmented, distorted, as though something interfered with them. Then, shockingly, came words that should have been impossible. A voice confirmed descent. Another, moments later, whispered, "We set on the surface." If true, this means the mission succeeded in landing humans on Mars years, even decades before the public believed it possible. But then the transmission stopped. No final message, no farewell, just silence. The crew was never heard from again. Officially, they had perished long before reaching orbit. Unofficially, they were the first humans to walk on Mars, and perhaps the first to never return. Speculation swirls around what happened after they landed. Did their systems fail? Did the harsh Martian environment claim them, asphyxiation or radiation slowly ending their lives? Or was it something else? Something they discovered upon arrival, something they were not prepared to face. The leaked transcripts are chilling in their ambiguity. One line, barely audible through static, mentions structures on the horizon. Another describes movement where no movement should be. And then the haunting words, "We are not alone here." It is impossible to verify the authenticity of these transcripts. Some insist they are elaborate fabrications, Cold War disinformation, or the fantasies of conspiracy theorists. But others point to details that align too perfectly with what we now know. The location they described matches areas near Olympus Mons, the same region where satellite scans years later revealed underground anomalies resembling ancient cities. Could it be that the astronauts landed near those shadows, saw with their own eyes what officials have worked so hard to conceal? The deeper one dives into the mystery, the darker it grows. Families of astronauts who served in the 1990s recall unexplained disappearances, loved ones who left for classified assignments and never returned, their names never etched in stone like other fallen heroes. Some widows received pensions under different titles, paid in silence to guarantee their compliance. The names of those astronauts never appeared on rosters, their missions scrubbed from public record. But whispers persist, and in rare moments of candor, former officials have hinted that yes, something was attempted, yes, something was lost, and no, we cannot speak of it. What could justify such secrecy? If astronauts truly set foot on Mars in the 1990s, why would it be hidden from the world? The answer may lie in what they found. Imagine, for a moment, the implications. Humanity's first steps on another planet reveal not a barren wasteland, but ruins, structures, movement, evidence of life. Would governments announce such a discovery, or would they bury it, fearing global panic, fearing that the revelation would not unite humanity but shatter it? The transcripts that survive hint at a growing dread among the crew in their final days. One recording, corrupted and faint, seems to capture an argument. A voice says, "We should leave. This place isn't empty." Another replies, "We can't. Orders are clear. We stay." Then silence. No further records exist. The fate of those astronauts is unknown. Did they die on the surface, their bodies swallowed by the Martian dust? Or were they taken by something else, something hidden in the shadows, something that allowed them to arrive but never to depart? Some theories suggest the astronauts may not have perished at all, that they remained alive, trapped, perhaps even captured beneath the Martian surface. If so, they would have lived and died alone, prisoners of a world humanity was never meant to touch. Others go further still, speculating that their mission was not merely lost but erased because they had made contact. Contact not with microbes or fossils, but with intelligence. And if they did, then perhaps they learned something humanity was not ready to hear. The parallels are unsettling. A signal intercepted years earlier, dismissed as static, later shown to be deliberate, mathematical, alive. Underground anomalies beneath Olympus Mons, shaped like cities, buried and hidden. And now a mission that never failed, but succeeded in silence, delivering its crew into the heart of those shadows. The pieces fit together like fragments of a puzzle, painting a picture too terrifying to complete. Tonight, their names are lost to history, their faces forgotten, but somewhere buried in classified archives are photographs, transmissions, data files that tell the truth, that humanity has already set foot on Mars, and in doing so has already learned that we are not alone. The question is not whether the astronauts vanished, but why. Did they stumble upon secrets meant to remain buried, or were they silenced to keep those secrets safe from the rest of us? What we know is this: the official story is a lie. The mission did not fail before orbit. The astronauts did not vanish in the void of space. They reached their destination. They saw something that could not be explained, something that made silence more valuable than truth. And for that, they never returned. So when we look back at the 1990s, at a decade marked by quiet progress and hidden ambitions, we must ask ourselves how much of what we are told is real. How many missions have gone unnoticed, their successes twisted into failures to protect us from knowledge we are deemed unprepared to face, and how many more have vanished, their footsteps erased from the dust of Mars, their voices buried in the static of the void. One day perhaps the truth will emerge. One day a photograph will leak, a file will slip through, and we will see with our own eyes what those astronauts saw. Until then, all we have are whispers. Whispers of voices that reached across millions of miles. Voices that spoke of structures, of movement, of not being alone. Whispers that fell silent all at once, leaving behind only the question that haunts us still. Did they discover something humanity was not ready to face? Or did something on Mars discover them first? There are secrets carved into stone, messages, left not for the people of their own time, but for those of us who would come thousands of years later, when the questions they raised would matter most. Across deserts, in jungles, beneath the dust of forgotten ruins, archaeologists have uncovered symbols, carvings, and alignments that defy explanation. Some are dismissed as coincidence, others as religious ritual, but a growing body of evidence points towards something far stranger, something that ties our planet to another world, millions of miles away, a connection between ancient Earth and the Red Planet, and the truth may have been staring at us in stone all along. It began with a series of photographs taken by orbiters scanning the Martian surface. Among the endless plains of rock and dust, scientists noticed strange formations, unnatural shapes rising where only nature should reign. At first glance, they looked like ridges, cliffs, or weathered hills, but as the data improved, patterns began to emerge. Geometrical arrangements, angles too precise to be random, entire clusters of formations that, when viewed from above, looked eerily like the outlines of cities. One formation in particular captured global imagination, a mesa shaped uncannily like a human face, staring up from the Martian soil. NASA called it a trick of light and shadow, an illusion created by low-resolution images. But as higher-resolution scans became available, something strange occurred. Instead of dismissing the formation, some researchers argued that the face contained more structure than randomness could explain. Symmetry, proportions, and alignments matching the kind of work seen in human architecture. And then, when compared against ancient carvings found on Earth, the similarities became impossible to ignore. In a remote desert, archaeologists studying a long-forgotten civilization uncovered a series of tablets, etched thousands of years before telescopes or spacecraft were ever imagined. Among them were carvings of two spheres, one unmistakably Earth, with its continents crudely but recognizably depicted. The second sphere was smaller, shaded differently, with markings that bore resemblance to the polar caps of Mars. Between the two was a series of lines, as if showing movement from one world to the other. But most disturbing of all, beneath the smaller sphere were markings, structures that mirrored the very formations orbiters had just photographed near the Martian volcanoes. How could a civilization, with no access to modern science, have drawn what appeared to be the surface of Mars? Unless, of course, they knew. The parallels deepened when further carvings were discovered in Egypt, in South America, in the Middle East, cultures separated by oceans and centuries, yet each leaving behind depictions of a smaller red world often shown alongside warnings. In one case, a Mayan carving depicts figures pointing toward the sky, where two spheres are etched. One sphere glows with radiant lines, the other appears cracked, fractured. Below it, human-like figures bow in fear. The caption, when translated, spoke of the gods of fire who came from the red star, and the silence they left behind. What were ancient people trying to tell us? Were these simply myths, allegories of the heavens, or were they records, memories of contact, passed into legend, encoded in stone so that one day we would understand? The more archaeologists searched, the stranger it became. In Turkey, one site contained a temple built thousands of years before the pyramids, its pillars etched with spirals, grids, and star maps. At its center, a carving depicted two worlds aligned in orbit. One was Earth, the other matched the orbit of Mars with shocking precision. Alongside them, a series of geometrical blueprints, impossible to decipher, but eerily similar to the underground patterns discovered in the Olympus Mons scans. It was as if Earth's oldest builders had not only known about Mars, but had tried to replicate its structures here, in stone. Scientists scoffed. They called it coincidence, the human tendency to impose order on chaos, to see patterns where none exist. But others argued that the patterns were too precise, too widespread to be dismissed. How could civilizations separated by oceans, with no contact, each depict a second world that resembled Mars? How could they etch into stone formations that matched geological anomalies millions of miles away, unless they shared a common origin, unless the knowledge was given to them? The idea is unsettling, but it has grown harder to ignore. Some believe that Earth's earliest civilizations were not entirely born here, but seeded, taught, guided, perhaps even warned by survivors of a Martian catastrophe. Long before our recorded history, Mars may have been alive, a thriving world of oceans and skies. But something happened. A war, a disaster, an extinction, and those who remained may have traveled here, bringing with them memories of their lost world. Memories carved into stone so that even as empires rose and fell, the warnings would endure. One archaeologist who studied these patterns obsessively claimed the carvings formed a message, a blueprint. When mapped together, they revealed more than just drawings. They formed an equation, a ratio, a code that matched the geometry of both Earth's pyramids and the formations on Mars. The message, he believed, was not just that Mars was inhabited, but that the two worlds were linked, that humanity itself may carry in its blood the echo of a Martian past. If true, the implications are staggering. We are not merely explorers of Mars, we may be returning home, and the warnings carved in stone may not be myth at all, but memory, a memory of what destroyed Mars, left behind so that we might avoid the same fate. But what was that fate? What silence swept across the red world, leaving only dust and ruins? As the archaeologist pushed his research forward, he encountered resistance. Funding withdrawn, access denied, colleagues turning away. His final papers, never published, spoke of a blueprint of extinction, a pattern that seemed to suggest cycles of collapse. The last line of his notes is chilling. We are repeating their steps. Days later, he disappeared. But fragments of his research remain. The carvings, the alignments, the impossible depictions of Mars in ancient stone, they remain, and they force us to ask, what did our ancestors know, and who told them? Were the warnings meant for us, for a generation thousands of years in the future that would finally have the technology to leave Earth and return to Mars? Or were they meant for themselves, a desperate attempt to record the memory of what they fled, knowing their time was short? If humanity is the child of two worlds, then the stones may be our inheritance, a map, a history, a prophecy. And if so, then every step we take toward Mars is not discovery, but destiny. The question is not whether ancient civilizations knew about Mars. The evidence in stone suggests they did. The question is why? Why warn us? Why leave behind blueprints of cities and ruins and ratios that bind Earth to Mars like twin worlds? Did they know that one day we would awaken enough to see the patterns, to recognize the symbols, to realize that we too are standing on the edge of the same abyss that consumed them? Somewhere in the dust of forgotten temples and buried ruins lies the key to our future. The carvings are not just echoes of the past, they are messages waiting for the moment we are ready to listen. And now, as we prepare to set foot on Mars once more, we must ask ourselves, are we following in their footsteps or walking blindly into their catastrophe? The blueprint is written, in stone, in soil, in our own blood, but are we wise enough to read it before it is too late? The deserts of Mars are vast and silent, stretching farther than the human eye can see, dunes of rust-red dust rippling under a thin alien sky. To us, it is a dead world, an open graveyard of rock and wind. But to the machines we've sent there, it is something else entirely, a place of hidden whispers, of systems that falter only when they draw too close to places someone doesn't want them to go. At least, that is the story whispered by the engineers, the people behind NASA's proudest achievements, the ones who monitor every transmission, every heartbeat of the rovers exploring the Martian surface. They speak in low tones, off the record, about anomalies, malfunctions that happen not at random, but at specific coordinates, about systems behaving as though something were reaching back across the void, interfering, watching. From the beginning, Mars has resisted our touch. Every mission is a gamble, every landing a risk. But over the decades, a pattern began to emerge, subtle at first, then undeniable. The rovers, spirit, opportunity, curiosity, perseverance, each had moments when their systems failed or glitched. Cameras froze, wheels jammed, power drained unexpectedly. These incidents were always explained away. Software bugs, dust storms, cosmic rays. And perhaps they were. But a few engineers began to notice something they could not explain. The malfunctions clustered in certain regions, certain places, as if the planet itself were drawing a boundary. One such region lay near the ancient riverbeds of Valles Marineris, where layers of rock tell the story of water long vanished. Another stretched near the base of Olympus Mons, the largest volcano in the solar system, where satellite scans had revealed those strange underground anomalies, patterns like cities buried in shadow. It was as if the rovers were allowed to wander freely over the empty plains, but the moment they approached these forbidden zones, something reached out and touched them. Systems flickered, instruments spun nonsense, data streams filled with static. At first, engineers attributed it to coincidence. Space is harsh, Mars is harsher, but then came the hacks. Not hacks in the human sense. No foreign computer, no rogue signal from Earth. These were different. Strange lines of code appeared in the rover's systems. Subtle changes to data that no one had uploaded. Images corrupted, not with noise but with patterns, shapes like spirals, fractals, symbols, that repeated across multiple cameras at once. No engineer could trace the source. No server logs showed unauthorized access, yet the anomalies persisted. One night, an engineer on the Curiosity team stared at a corrupted file, trying to make sense of it. It was a photograph, taken by the rover's mast cam, of an ordinary stretch of Martian sand, but across the dunes, faint but visible, were marks like script. Not scratches, not shadows, something etched into the data itself. The engineer enhanced the image, running filters, sharpening the contrast. The marks resolved into symbols, prime numbers, just like the signal intercepted years earlier by the cryptographer who had vanished. The engineer reported it up the chain. Within hours the file was sealed, his access revoked. When colleagues asked, he said only, "It wasn't a glitch." This was not an isolated event. Across multiple missions, similar incidents occurred. Data streams filled with repeating pulses, images overlaid with ghostly shapes, wheels refusing to move forward when nothing blocked them, instruments turning themselves off as though guided by an invisible hand. In one case, a rover inexplicably drove in circles for hours, as if lost, ignoring its programming until engineers forced a reboot. The official explanations grew thinner: dust storms, cosmic rays, but in the quiet halls of mission control, a darker theory took root. What if the malfunctions weren't random at all? What if they were warnings? The idea was unthinkable. NASA could not risk public panic, nor the ridicule of the scientific community. And yet, some engineers began to whisper that their systems were being hacked by something not from Earth, not by a rival nation or a human saboteur, but by something on Mars itself. Something alive. Not alive in the way of microbes or lichen, but alive in the way of intelligence. Watching, waiting, reaching back across the signal lines to let us know we had come too close. When Perseverance began its mission, this theory became harder to ignore. Equipped with the most advanced suite of instruments yet, it approached an area of Jezero crater rumored among insiders to be a dead zone for electronics. Weeks before, an anonymous leak posted coordinates online, claiming that Perseverance would see what no human has seen before, and then go dark. Sure enough, as the rover neared those coordinates, its systems began to behave strangely. Instruments flickered, cameras recorded blank frames. The rover stopped transmitting for 3 minutes. When the signal returned, it sent an image. At first glance, it was empty. A flat stretch of Martian ground, but hidden in the pixels, once enhanced, was a shape like an eye carved in the sand. Was it real? A trick of wind and dust? Or a message? No one could say. The file was quickly removed from NASA's public archive, but not before copies were saved, analyzed, passed through networks of independent researchers. They compared the shape to ancient carvings on Earth, the same carvings linked to Mars in Episode 4. The match was unnerving. The same spirals, the same proportions. It was as if the red planet had answered across time, its symbols mirrored in ours. If something on Mars is watching us, what is it? Machines, left behind by a long-dead civilization, survivors, living underground, manipulating the surface through unknown means, or something more alien still, something we cannot categorize. The engineers do not know. They only know the pattern. Approach certain places, and the rovers misbehave. Step too close, and the whispers begin. Some claim they've heard them, not literally, but through the instruments. Odd modulations in the static, like faint voices speaking in no known tongue. One technician swears he heard his own name, drawn out in the hiss of a corrupted signal. Another described a low hum, rhythmic, like breathing, woven into the telemetry. These claims are dismissed, of course, as stress, as the mind's tendency to impose meaning on noise. But taken together, they form a mosaic of unease. The official story remains unchanged. Mars is silent, Mars is dead, Mars is ours, to explore without fear, but behind closed doors, some at NASA are no longer so sure. One leaked memo described persistent anomalous interference consistent with non-natural origins. Another warned that continued incursions into certain regions may provoke unpredictable responses. A third simply said, "We are being observed." Yet, the missions continue. We keep sending machines into the Martian deserts, like trespassers leaving footprints in someone else's sand. And each time, the whispers grow louder. Each time, the malfunctions grow stranger. If the pattern holds, then one day soon, the machines may stop coming back altogether. What would that mean for us? If something on Mars can hack our rovers, can it reach further? Can it touch the satellites that orbit the planet? Can it reach the networks on Earth? Could it already be here, embedded in the data, watching us through the very signals we use to watch it? The more we look, the more the coincidences dissolve. Prime numbers in corrupted files. Symbols etched in dust. Malfunctions only in forbidden zones. Carvings on Earth matching formations on Mars. And always the silence when the truth comes too close. A silence like the pause between breaths, like the moment before a predator moves. We have always looked to Mars as a blank slate, a dead world waiting for our footprints. But what if Mars has been looking back all along? What if the planet is not simply a grave, but a sentinel, a keeper of secrets buried in dust, watching, testing, deciding when we have come far enough? Perhaps the whispers in the desert are not threats but warnings. Perhaps they are saying, "Stop, go no further. This is not your world." Or perhaps they are invitations luring us closer to the edge of discovery or destruction. For now, the engineers can only watch their monitors, listen to the static and wonder what moves beneath the dunes, what eyes stare up at the rovers, what intelligence rides the radio waves back across the void. They cannot speak of it publicly. They can only whisper to one another, late at night, when the signals falter and the screens flicker. Whispers about whispers, whispers about the desert. And as each new rover rolls across the Martian sands, as each one draws nearer to the forbidden places, we inch closer to an answer that may change everything. Are the malfunctions merely the planet's hostility, a coincidence of dust and radiation? Or are they the first true sign of another mind, one older than ours, one that has been waiting beneath the rust-red soil for millions of years? If so, then every image we take, every line of code, every signal sent is not just data. It is a conversation we do not yet understand, a conversation that may already have an audience. Could Martians be watching every step we take? Or have they been guiding them all along? For centuries, humanity has looked outward to the stars in search of origins. We've traced our lineage back through fossils and bones, through countless generations, through the long march of evolution stretching over millions of years. We tell ourselves that the story begins in the mud, in the oceans of a young Earth, where simple organisms became complex, and complex creatures became us. But what if the truth is stranger? What if the story of humanity did not begin on this world at all? In laboratories around the globe, geneticists have been unraveling the human code, decoding the blueprint of life written inside every cell, and hidden within that code, they have found something that does not belong. A fragment that refuses to fit the timeline, that stands out like a message written in a different hand. A fragment some now believe may not be of earthly origin at all. The discovery was not sudden, nor was it widely publicized. It began with the Human Genome Project, a massive undertaking in the 1990s and early 2000s that sought to map the entire sequence of human DNA, billions of base pairs strung together like beads on a thread, spelling out the recipe for life. At first, the results matched expectation. Much of our DNA aligned with other species on Earth, confirming our evolutionary kinship. We shared genes with primates, with mammals, even with plants and bacteria, but buried within the sequence, in places where no evolutionary link could explain it, anomalies appeared. Segments of DNA that had no counterpart in any known terrestrial life. Segments that looked older than they should be, or newer, as if inserted suddenly without precedent. One sequence in particular drew attention, a stretch of code unlike anything else in the genome, rich in patterns and repetitions, as though designed rather than evolved. When scientists attempted to trace its origin, they hit a wall. It was not inherited from known ancestors. It did not mutate from simpler forms. It appeared in the human genome suddenly, as though placed there. Some called it a genetic fossil, a leftover from an unknown species long extinct. Others whispered a more unsettling possibility. It was a message. The idea that DNA might carry an intentional message is not new. The double helix, with its elegance and precision, has long fascinated thinkers who see in it not just biology but design. But design by whom? For years the anomaly was quietly filed away, a puzzle without context, until, that is, comparative studies began to look beyond Earth. Samples from meteorites, carrying traces of organic molecules, hinted at structures similar to the anomaly. The same strange repetitions, the same defiance of random mutation. It was as if the fragment in our DNA echoed something found in the stars, something Martian. Mars, after all, was once alive, or so we believe. Ancient riverbeds, dry deltas, minerals formed in water, all evidence that the red planet once carried oceans, perhaps even life. If microbes lived there, could they have shared genetic material with Earth? Some suggest panspermia, the theory that life on Earth began with material carried here by meteors from Mars, but others go further. What if it wasn't just microbes? What if it was intelligence? The fragment in question does not behave like random code. It carries ratios, symmetries, redundancies that echo mathematical constants. Some researchers claim that when mapped visually, the code forms geometrical patterns, spirals, fractals, symbols, eerily similar to the ones carved in ancient stone and the patterns seen in Martian anomalies. The suggestion is shocking that our DNA contains not only instructions for building a body, but instructions for remembering a history, that encoded within us is the record of another world. The implications are staggering. If part of our DNA originated elsewhere, then humanity may not be native to Earth at all. We may be the children of two worlds, seeded here as part of a larger plan, but seeded by whom? Survivors fleeing a dying Mars. Engineers, ancient and unseen, using Earth as a cradle for their legacy, or something more alien, more unfathomable, that uses life itself as its canvas. The scientists who dare to speak of this face ridicule. Their papers are rejected, their careers threatened. The anomaly is dismissed as noise, as contamination, as error, yet the evidence grows. When the fragment is compared across human populations, it remains identical, untouched by variation, as though carefully preserved, unlike other parts of our genome, which mutate and shift across generations. This fragment does not change. It endures waiting. Some describe it as a signature, a mark left behind by those who wrote our code. Others describe it as a trigger, something that may activate when certain conditions are met. A switch hidden in our biology, waiting for the right signal. If so, then what is it meant to do? Unlock potential, reveal knowledge, or awaken something within us that has long lain dormant? In whispered circles, a darker theory circulates, that the fragment is not a gift, but a leash, a way of binding us, of ensuring that our path follows one laid down long ago, that we are not free, but part of a program written before history began. If true, then our drive to explore, our obsession with the stars, our hunger to return to Mars, may not be curiosity at all. It may be memory, a compulsion written into our very cells. There are moments in genetic history that defy explanation, sudden leaps in complexity, bursts of evolution, where new abilities appeared almost overnight. The growth of the human brain, far beyond what survival alone demanded. The emergence of language, abstract thought, consciousness. Could these have been natural, or were they nudges, activations of the code seeded long before? Consider this. The fragment in question bears resemblance to sequences found in no other species, not in apes, not in primates, not in any creature we call kin. It is uniquely human. It sets us apart, as though something or someone wanted us to be different, wanted us to rise. And if they wanted us to rise, what did they want us to become? The connections deepen when one compares the code to ancient myths. Across cultures there are stories of beings who descended from the sky, who shaped humanity, who gifted knowledge and fire, gods, teachers, watchers. What if these were not myths at all, but memories of those who seeded the code? What if their gift was not fire, but DNA? In laboratories, attempts to fully decode the anomaly have led to strange results. Patterns repeat endlessly, forming loops that some say are self-referential, as if the code is aware of itself. One researcher described it as a program inside a program, like a voice speaking from within the code. He claimed that when run through certain algorithms, the sequence generated signals, rhythms, pulses reminiscent of radio waves. He believed it was not just a fragment of DNA, it was a transmission, a message placed inside us, meant to be discovered when we were ready. If so, then the discovery of this fragment may not be an accident. It may be the fulfillment of a plan written into our blood, a plan that began not on Earth, but on Mars. Perhaps long ago, when Mars was dying, its inhabitants sought to preserve themselves, to send their essence across the void, not ships, not machines, but life itself, DNA. They placed their message in the smallest, most enduring vessel of all. And now here we are, the children of Earth and Mars, waking up to the truth hidden within us. But if this is true, then what comes next? What is the purpose of the message? Is it simply to remember, to remind us of where we came from? Or is it a command, an instruction we have yet to understand? Some fear that unlocking the message may unleash something we cannot control. Others believe it is the key to our survival, the map to a destiny we cannot escape. The fragment endures, unchanging, indelible, as though waiting for a question to be asked. Perhaps the question is this: are we alone? And the answer, written in our blood, has always been no. We are not alone, because we are not only of Earth, we are Martian as well. The message has been there all along, not in the stars, not in the ruins of deserts, but in us. And now, as we stand on the edge of colonizing Mars, we must wonder, is this our triumph, or is it the fulfillment of a plan set in motion long before we knew it? Are we explorers, or are we sleepwalkers following the path of a blueprint written in our cells? Perhaps the truth is both. Perhaps we are fulfilling a destiny we do not yet understand, one encoded into us by ancestors we have never seen. The message in human DNA is clear in one sense, and terrifying in another. It does not belong. It does not evolve. It waits, and the more we uncover, the more it feels as though something is about to be revealed, something that has been waiting for us to be ready. But ready for what? To reclaim our place among the stars, to repeat the mistakes of Mars, or to meet the authors of the code face to face? For now, the fragment remains silent, but its silence is not absence. It is a pause, a breath before the answer, and one day soon we may learn the truth. Were we seeded here as part of a larger plan? Or are we the plan itself? Night after night, the sky above Earth is alive with quiet movement. Thousands of satellites orbit unseen, glinting faintly as they pass through sunlight. Tiny artificial stars in a vast black sea. To the untrained eye, they are indistinguishable from meteors or distant planes. But to those who know how to watch, every glimmer, every arc of light tells a story. Governments, corporations, even hobbyists use these eyes in the sky to track our world. But recently, amateur astronomers have noticed something strange, not in Earth's orbit itself, but between Earth and Mars. Flashes of light, faint but distinct, appearing in patterns too regular to be chance. They seem to be signals, like someone flicking a cosmic Morse code across the void. And if the theory is correct, the signals are not just traveling between Earth and Mars, they're being exchanged by something already here, something orbiting our own planet, hidden in plain sight. The first reports came from scattered corners of the world. Backyard stargazers, retired engineers, university students with second-hand telescopes. People who spent long hours under the night sky charting satellites, tracking comets, photographing meteors. They began to see tiny transient flashes, not steady trails, not moving dots, but momentary glints, like sunlight reflecting off an object tumbling in space. At first, these were dismissed as debris, the leftover shards of rockets and dead satellites that now fill our orbital lanes. But the flashes followed patterns. They repeated at regular intervals. They appeared in specific corridors like nodes on a grid stretching invisibly between Earth and Mars. In online forums and obscure astronomy journals, a theory began to take shape. What if Mars wasn't just sending signals, What if Mars had already sent something to us? Not rovers, not probes we could see, but stealth satellites, devices launched quietly, designed to blend in with the debris of our orbital shell, to pass as harmless junk while they observed everything below. The thought was almost absurd. Launching anything from Mars to Earth without detection would require technology far beyond our own. Yet the flashes kept appearing. The patterns grew clearer. Someone or something was talking. At first, mainstream scientists refused to comment. The flashes were observational errors, camera artifacts, glints from Starlink or old rocket bodies. Yet some observers had data spanning months, even years, showing the same objects in the same places, moving in ways that did not match known satellites. They plotted trajectories, matched them against public catalogues. Nothing. No registration. No owner. And yet, these objects seemed to adjust their orbits, subtly shifting positions, as though in response to one another, as though coordinating. The most disturbing observation came from a pair of amateur astronomers in Chile, who began watching a cluster of objects near geostationary orbit, the ring of space where satellites hover above the same point on Earth's surface. They noticed that certain debris objects appeared to pulse faintly at night, like beacons. When mapped over time, the pulses formed sequences of prime numbers, not random noise, not a beacon to Earth, but a beacon to somewhere else. The idea spread quickly through the small but obsessive community of independent skywatchers. Mars had been silent for billions of years, or so we thought. But what if it had not been silent at all? What if it had been preparing? The pattern of the flashes seemed to line up with Mars's orbital window, the period every 2 years when the planet is closest to Earth. As if transmissions were strongest then. Strongest, perhaps, because the hidden satellites were relaying something back to Mars. No one knows when the objects arrived. Some speculate they've been here for decades, placed covertly in our orbit during some past event we never understood. Others whisper that they might have always been here, predating our own space age, quietly waiting until humanity developed the technology to notice them. After all, most of Earth's orbital debris is not tracked closely. Only objects larger than 10 centimeters are routinely catalogued. A sufficiently advanced probe could disguise itself among the noise, indistinguishable from the thousands of lifeless fragments circling our planet. Governments, predictably, have denied everything. NASA and ESA insist there are no unaccounted satellites behaving in the manner described. Defense agencies claim full control over orbital tracking, yet internal memos leaked to journalists tell another story. Phrases like non-cooperative orbital bodies and unidentified relay anomalies have appeared in classified briefings. Some documents even warn of unknown transmissions intersecting with secure channels. Officially, these are dismissed as foreign adversary capabilities. Unofficially, they sound like something else. What would be the purpose of such satellites? If they exist, why are they here? Some think they're observing us, cataloguing our progress, much like we observe Mars with our own probes. Others suspect something darker, a reconnaissance before an arrival, a silent surveillance before action. Mars, after all, has a vantage point unlike any other. It is our nearest neighbour, a perfect platform for long-term observation. And if there is intelligence there, hidden beneath the surface, in the shadows of Olympus Mons as earlier episodes suggested, then watching Earth would be the logical next step. There are other hints. Over the past decade, high-frequency radio bursts have been detected at odd intervals, sometimes coinciding with solar storms, sometimes during periods of quiet space weather, bursts that appear to come not from deep space but from just beyond our atmosphere. Amateur radio operators claim to have intercepted pings at unusual frequencies when pointing their equipment skyward, short, sharp bursts that do not match known satellites. Some of these pings seem to echo faintly, like a signal being repeated by a relay station. A relay station, perhaps something orbiting Earth. In 2018, A former contractor for a European space agency gave an anonymous interview, claiming he had worked on a dark project tasked with analyzing unidentified objects in medium Earth orbit. According to him, his team was instructed to map unregistered bodies with unusual behavior. When they attempted to identify one such object, a faint, tumbling cylinder, they were abruptly ordered to stop. We were told it was an intelligence operation, but whose intelligence? That was never clear. He left the project months later, convinced they had been tracking something not of this world. Skeptics argue that all of this is misinterpretation, that humans see patterns where none exist, that our hunger for mystery leads us to mistake coincidence for conspiracy. Yet the data grows harder to ignore. The flashes continue. The patterns repeat. Some observers claim to have predicted them, predicting when and where a flash will occur, and then seeing it happen exactly as expected. That is not coincidence. That is behavior. If Mars has indeed placed satellites in our orbit, the implications are staggering. It would mean an intelligence capable of interplanetary stealth, capable of observing us without our knowledge. It would mean that while we look at Mars through telescopes and rovers, Mars is looking back, not with eyes, but with hidden machines circling our own world, and perhaps watching not just what we do, but how we think, how we prepare, how we live. Some point to our own history for comparison. Before sending troops or settlers into unknown lands, empires always sent scouts. They mapped the terrain, learned the languages, studied the people. Perhaps what we are seeing now is no different. If an ancient Martian civilization still exists, hidden beneath its planet's surface, then Earth may be the next phase of its plan. Not invasion, not yet, but study. This idea becomes even more disturbing when combined with the anomalies on Mars itself, regions where NASA rovers malfunction, unexplained interference when orbiters pass over certain coordinates, and now flashes between worlds, as if data is being exchanged. Could it be that our exploration of Mars has triggered a response, that our machines, our eyes on their soil, have made them intensify their eyes on us? It is impossible to know for sure, but something about the flashes feels urgent. In the past year, their frequency has increased. Patterns once faint are now brighter, clearer, as though more devices are active. Some claim to see formation maneuvers, multiple objects flashing in sequence, as if sending complex messages. One observer described it as watching a constellation come alive, as though the night sky itself had begun to signal. There is perhaps one hope for answers. A small group of independent astronomers has begun pooling data, triangulating the positions of the suspected objects, building an open-source map of their movements. If they can chart orbits precisely enough, they may be able to predict when the objects align, when the transmissions peak. They call their effort Project Sentinel. Their goal to catch one of the flashes on multiple instruments simultaneously, to prove once and for all that the phenomenon is real. But some in the group are already nervous. They've reported strange interference on their networks, unexplained power failures in their observatories, even unmarked vehicles watching their homes. Whether this is paranoia or a sign of something more sinister is unclear. Yet the sense of being watched, the sense that something does not want this discovered, permeates their work. And maybe that is the point. Maybe the flashes are not just signals between Mars and hidden satellites. Maybe they are signals to us. A warning, a test, a demonstration of power, or an invitation. But to what? As humanity prepares to send crewed missions to Mars within the next decade, we must ask ourselves, are we the explorers, or are we the observed? Are we sending our people into the unknown, or are we walking into the field of vision of an intelligence that has been waiting for us all along? Late at night, when the skies are clear, those who know where to look can still see the flashes, a brief glint, a momentary spark against the velvet darkness, each one a question, each one a reminder. We are not alone, not even here, in the space around our own world. Something is up there, circling silently, invisible but aware. If the theory is true, then Earth is already under surveillance. The watchers are not coming. They are here. And the question that lingers, the one no one dares to answer, is not whether they are studying us, but what they are preparing for. Because every scout, every surveyor, every watchman in history has been sent for one reason: to prepare the ground. And above our heads, hidden among the stars, the watchers wait. Wars are fought in many ways. Some are loud and undeniable, tearing across the landscape in fire and steel. Others are waged in silence, in shadows, their true battles hidden from the eyes of ordinary people. The most dangerous conflicts are not the ones that appear on television, but the ones no one admits are happening at all. Across the world, military insiders have begun to speak in hushed tones of encounters, moments when unidentified objects were tracked, not entering Earth's skies, but leaving them. Moments when aircraft and satellites were forced into evasive maneuvers by things they could not identify. Whispers suggest that governments have not only noticed these intrusions but responded, that behind closed doors, a war is already being fought, not on Earth's surface but in the skies above and perhaps far beyond, a war that no one has told us about. The first hints came decades ago, buried in reports from radar operators and fighter pilots. During the Cold War, both American and Soviet forces documented unidentified objects streaking upward from the atmosphere. Not meteors falling down, but machines climbing out. Objects moving faster than any known craft, leaving no contrails, no exhaust, simply vanishing into the black. These encounters were recorded, logged, classified and forgotten, at least officially. Yet the witnesses remembered. They told stories of being ordered not to speak, of seeing things that could not exist, of moments when the machinery of war briefly turned its eyes towards something far stranger than an enemy nation. Over time, patterns emerged. Whenever tensions on Earth grew high, during missile crises, nuclear tests, moments when humanity stood close to destruction, the sightings spiked. Objects were seen darting across test ranges, hovering above missile silos, and in rare cases, accelerating upward into space, as though fleeing or reporting. At the time, the phenomenon was written off as paranoia, as Cold War hysteria, but to those who were there, it felt like something else. Something watching, something monitoring us. Fast forward to the present, and the pattern has not stopped. In the last 2 decades, a quiet flood of testimony has surfaced. Navy pilots describing impossible craft off the coasts, operators reporting objects breaching restricted airspace, even astronauts hinting at strange lights outside their capsules. Most disturbing are the accounts of objects leaving the atmosphere, tracked on radar and infrared. These are not myths whispered in the dark. They are recorded incidents, blips rising at speeds no missile can achieve, disappearing into orbit in seconds. Officially, these anomalies are instrument errors or unknowns under investigation. Unofficially, some insiders believe they are evidence of a conflict we cannot see. What kind of conflict? Not one of armies clashing in space, at least not yet, but of probes intercepting probes, of weapons tests that never make the news, of a struggle for control of the orbital high ground. And if the reports are true, this silent war may not be fought only between human nations. It may already involve something else, something from Mars. The suggestion is staggering. But consider the timeline. We know Mars has been studied for decades. We know our rovers malfunction in regions they should not. We know flashes of light connect Earth and Mars like whispered signals across the void. If a Martian presence has truly survived, hidden beneath the red planet's surface, would it not make sense for them to monitor us? And if they have placed objects in our orbit, as some astronomers suspect, then what happens when our militaries encounter those objects? Do they ignore them, or do they try to remove them? Several whistleblowers suggest the latter, that quiet engagements have already occurred. One former contractor described being tasked with analyzing satellite failures over the last 10 years. Many were explained by micrometeoroids, solar flares or mechanical breakdowns. But not all. Some satellites seem to vanish. Not explode, not malfunction, just disappear from their tracked orbits as though plucked away. His team jokingly referred to it as the Hand of Mars, but he claimed their internal reports treated it as no joke. Others speak of classified launchers, rockets sent not to deliver new satellites, but to intercept unknown ones. These missions, they say, were disguised as ordinary deployments or resupply operations. In truth, they were attempts to neutralize unregistered objects circling Earth. No proof has ever been released, but launch schedules contain anomalies, rockets sent up without payload announcements, missions that were quietly scrubbed from official records. If true, these were not experiments. They were battles, silent, secret, fought above our heads while we slept. Of course, governments deny all of this, yet sometimes denial itself reveals the cracks. In 2021, leaked footage showed a glowing object rising rapidly from the ocean near a US Navy vessel, climbing into the sky until it vanished. Officials refused to identify it. Privately, some admitted that similar events had occurred near military ranges worldwide, objects arriving, objects departing. The question is, departing to where and why? Some believe these encounters are not new at all, that they have been happening for decades, perhaps centuries, that humanity has long been watched, probed, tested, but only now, as we prepare to step onto Mars ourselves, has the watching become a contest. We are trespassing into territory claimed long ago, and like any power faced with an intruder, they are responding, not openly, not yet, but with skirmishes, with warnings, with silent engagements beyond the reach of cameras. The possibility is terrifying. A war humanity cannot admit is happening. A war in which our governments cannot even name the enemy. Imagine being a general, tasked with defending your skies, knowing the adversary is not Russia, not China, but something older, hidden beneath Martian soil. Imagine fighting battles you cannot announce, losing satellites you cannot explain, deploying weapons you cannot acknowledge. This is the burden hinted at by insiders, that our militaries may already be engaged in the first war, not between nations, but between worlds. What weapons could such a war involve? Not missiles and tanks, but beams of energy, directed pulsars, jammers and disruptors designed to blind or disable machines in orbit. Some insiders hint at exotic technologies, prototypes rushed into use after strange encounters, built not from our own research alone, but from something recovered, something reverse-engineered. If true, it means we are already fighting with tools borrowed from the very intelligence we oppose. And if that intelligence is Martian, then the irony is haunting. The silence surrounding this war is deafening. No one in power dares to admit it, for fear of panic. But silence does not erase the evidence. Strange launches, vanishing satellites, objects tracked, leaving our skies, and the most chilling detail reports of collisions, not with debris but with maneuvering bodies that changed trajectory before impact. Collisions that should have destroyed our satellites, but ended with both objects vanishing together, taken, captured, or destroyed in ways we cannot yet comprehend. The whispers grow darker still. A handful of pilots, mostly retired, have described seeing things during high-altitude flights they could not explain. Luminous shapes darting upward, objects streaking past, accelerating into space. One claimed that, on a classified mission, his jet systems briefly locked onto an object climbing faster than any aircraft should. He was ordered to break off, to let it go. The object vanished into the stars. He never spoke of it again, until years later when he admitted he believed it was not human. If these encounters are real, then the war is not one of conquest but of positioning. A cold war, silent and invisible, fought in shadows, each side maneuvering, probing, testing the other. Our governments conceal it because they do not understand it, and because they cannot admit to fighting an enemy that lives beneath another planet. But the concealment cannot last forever. The more we expand into space, the more encounters will occur. Eventually, something will slip into public view that cannot be explained away. And perhaps that is the moment we should fear. Because if the silent war is already underway, then silence itself is a weapon. The longer it goes unseen, the longer one side can prepare without challenge. Are we the side preparing, or the side being prepared against? There are those who claim the war is not silent at all, that it is loud, deafening, but only in places we are not allowed to hear. That in the dark of classified archives are recordings of battles fought in orbit, of flashes in the night sky, of unknown craft destroyed before they could reach our soil. That even now the reason we do not see open conflict is not because it is not happening, but because it is happening exactly where it must, beyond our eyes. And yet the question remains, if these battles are real, what is their purpose? Are the Martians, if they exist, attempting to stop us from leaving Earth? Or are they testing our defenses before making a move of their own? Are we protecting ourselves, or provoking something far greater? The truth, if it exists, remains hidden in vaults of classified documents, in the memories of soldiers sworn to silence, in the trajectories of satellites that should still be circling, but are not. But hints leak out. They always do. And those hints point to a chilling conclusion that the war has already begun, that it is being fought in silence, in secrecy, in places we cannot see, and that by the time we realize it, it may already be too late. When we look up at the night sky, we see peace, stars shining, planets glowing faintly, the calm of eternity. But behind that calm may lie conflict, unfolding just beyond our reach. A war that decides not only who controls space, but who controls Earth itself. A war between worlds fought without our knowledge, while we live our lives unaware. The flashes, the vanishings, the whispers, they tell a story, and that story is not of peace, but of struggle. A struggle our governments cannot name, and that we cannot yet imagine. But one day, perhaps soon, the silence will break. And when it does, we may learn that humanity has been fighting not for dominance, but for survival. The silent war is already here. It is above us, around us, hidden in the shadows of orbit. And the question that lingers is no longer whether it is happening. The question is who is winning. And if the answer is not us, what comes next? When the first fragments of the Martian signal were intercepted, the world dismissed them as noise, static from deep space, a meaningless anomaly picked up by sensitive instruments searching for something extraordinary. For weeks, teams of analysts tried to decode it, feeding the signal into algorithms, filtering, breaking it apart into mathematical sequences. Most agreed it resembled a repeating pulse, consistent with natural phenomena, but not everyone was convinced. Some saw structure where others saw randomness. They noticed patterns, harmonics, intervals that aligned too neatly to be accidental. At first they thought it was language, but what emerged was stranger. It was not words, it was numbers, and hidden in those numbers was something no one expected. A countdown. At first, the suggestion sounded absurd. A countdown implies intent. It implies a beginning and an end, a clock ticking toward an event. Why would a signal from Mars contain such a thing? What could possibly be waiting to happen at the end of it? Yet, as researchers dug deeper, skepticism turned into unease. The signal's intervals were precise, unchanging. They did not drift, did not degrade, did not waver with distance or time. Every pulse fit into a sequence, and that sequence mapped onto a decreasing scale. When projected forward, the end of the sequence pointed not decades away, not centuries, but to a date alarmingly near. Governments classified the findings instantly, but leaks spread. In academic circles, whispers circulated of a Martian clock, a message embedded in the static. Some claimed it was a warning, others a trigger, still others a kind of beacon. What united them all was the fear that something was coming. The countdown was not arbitrary. It was leading to something deliberate. The only question was what. Imagine for a moment what it means to discover such a signal. A series of pulses, unchanging, unwavering, ticking away in the cold of space. The very act of counting implies intelligence. Nature does not count down. Stars explode, planets collide, black holes consume, but none of these phenomena announce themselves with a clock. A countdown requires a counter, a mind, a will. Whoever or whatever created the Martian signal wanted us to know that something was approaching, or perhaps that something had already been set in motion long ago, and we were only now beginning to notice. The search for meaning in the signal became frantic. Mathematicians tried to match the sequence to orbital cycles, planetary alignments, cosmic events. Astronomers compared it to meteor trajectories, solar flare predictions, even long-term galactic calendars. Archaeologists were drawn in too, recalling ancient civilizations that carved warnings into stone, as if they too had seen something from the sky, something they feared. What unsettled them most was how the countdown in the signal seemed to echo timelines already buried in myths. Prophecies of destruction, cycles of renewal, the end of ages, all mirrored in cultures separated by oceans and centuries. Had humanity been warned before? Had we lived beneath this clock for longer than we realized? The deeper the research went, the darker the implications became. Some theorists argued the countdown pointed not to an event on Earth, but on Mars itself, perhaps the reawakening of something buried beneath its surface, a system powering up after eons of dormancy. If true, then the signal was not a warning at all, but a simple broadcast of fact. We are returning. Be ready. Others believed the countdown was not Martian in origin, but human, a message seeded into us long ago, now reactivated as we approached a particular stage of development. Our exploration of Mars, our expansion into space, could have triggered a timer we never knew existed. If so, then the signal was not reaching out to us from afar. It was a reflection, a mirror, reminding us of a pact we never made but must still honor. But the most chilling interpretation came from those who noticed a disturbing correlation. When projected into human timelines, the countdown aligned almost exactly with the surge of unexplained phenomena on Earth. The rise in unidentified aerial encounters, the strange malfunctions of rovers, the unexplained flashes between Earth and Mars. It was as though as the numbers ticked down, the activity increased, escalating towards something inevitable. If true, then the countdown was not only real, it was already affecting us. The clock is not abstract. It has an end date. Analysts who have risked their careers to speak claim the signal's sequence ends within our lifetimes. Some suggest mere years. This is not the distant concern of future generations. It is a shadow creeping closer even now. And with every day the pulses from Mars tick onward, cold and steady, uncaring of whether we understand them. Governments, of course, deny the existence of the countdown. Official statements describe the signal as noise, nothing more. Yet behind closed doors, evidence mounts. Telescopes confirm the pulses are still transmitting. Supercomputers continue to model their trajectory, their meaning. And quietly, funding has surged for planetary defense initiatives, for orbital monitoring, for classified technologies never acknowledged in public budgets. These are not the actions of leaders unconcerned with static. They are the movements of nations preparing for something. If this is a countdown, then its end will not be subtle. It will not pass unnoticed. The question is whether it heralds arrival or annihilation. Is something coming to us? Or is something already here waiting for permission to act? Consider the possibility that the countdown is a kind of trigger, a program set long ago waiting to complete. What happens when it reaches zero? Does it awaken machinery buried on Mars, opening doors to civilizations that have slumbered beneath its dust? Does it activate probes seeded across our solar system, suddenly stirring them into life? Or does it send a signal outward into the void, announcing that humanity has reached the moment of judgment? And what if it is not a warning or a beacon at all, but a weapon, a signal designed to disorient, to disrupt, to destabilize, a psychological device, planting fear into the minds of those who discover it. After all, what greater manipulation exists than forcing an entire planet to live under the shadow of a ticking clock? The simple knowledge of a countdown alters behavior, drives paranoia, compels preparation. Perhaps that is the plan, to fracture us from within before the true event even begins. But another question gnaws at the edges of this mystery. Why now? Why reveal the countdown at this precise moment in history? Humanity has existed for thousands of years. Civilizations have risen and fallen, built empires, explored the seas, mapped the stars. Why was the signal not understood then? Why was it only in the age of satellites, supercomputers, and deep space probes that we unraveled its meaning? Could it be that the signal was designed to be decoded only once we reached a specific level of technology, as if it were meant for us, not at any time, but at this time, that its creators knew we would eventually arrive here, standing on the brink, and that only then would we be capable of understanding? The implications stretch beyond science. If a countdown is real, then our history, our myths, our religions all take on new meaning. Were the warnings of apocalypse in ancient texts not imagination, but memory? Were the cycles of time spoken of by the Mayans, the Hindus, the Egyptians echoes of an earlier awareness of the same clock? Did ancient civilizations hear this signal too? And if they did, why did they leave their warnings in stone? Did they try to tell us that the countdown resets, again and again shaping the rise and fall of worlds? Are we merely the latest civilization to stand at its edge? The closer we look, the less the signal seems alien, and the more it feels intimate, almost personal. Not a message broadcast into the universe, but something directed squarely at us. The Martian signal is not noise. It is not random. It is a voice, repeating across the gulf of space, whispering in numbers. And what it whispers is not hope. It is inevitability. Scientists who continue to study it, those not silenced by classification or fear, admit privately that they no longer ask whether the countdown is real. They ask only what happens when it ends. A superstorm from the sun, a release of biological material from Mars, an arrival of something traveling across the stars, timed to intersect with our orbit, or something worse, something unimaginable, for which no human language yet has words. The more we prepare, the more powerless we feel, because a countdown implies control, and the control does not belong to us. We are not the counters. We are the counted. Each night, the pulses continue, washing through the void, steady as a heartbeat that is not ours, but one we now live by. Somewhere, something is waiting, measuring, approaching, and the day will come when the numbers stop, when the clock reaches zero, when whatever has been promised, or threatened, or set into motion finally arrives. And when that moment comes, humanity will face the question it has feared since the beginning, not if we are alone, but what happens when we are not. The countdown is not theory anymore. It is fact. It is hidden in plain sight, pulsing across the stars, ignored by those who cannot bear to believe, studied in secret by those who know the truth. And the truth is simple, terrifying, undeniable. Time is running out. The story has been building for years, through whispers, fragments, and shadows. A signal intercepted, a pulse repeating from the void, strange underground patterns beneath the largest volcano in the solar system, astronauts who vanished, their mission written off as failure, but whose traces point to something they discovered and never returned to tell. Ancient carvings on Earth matching the impossible landscapes of Mars, rovers that failed when approaching forbidden regions, flashes of light in orbit that should not be there, and a countdown hidden in plain sight, ticking toward an end. Only a handful of people dare to acknowledge. These were not separate mysteries. They were pieces of one story, scattered like shards across the centuries. Now the pieces fit together. The truth they form is darker than anything we imagined. It is not a question of if there is life on Mars, but when it will reveal itself, And when it does, what will it mean for us? Is this an invasion, or is it something even stranger, a homecoming? The pulse of the Martian signal has never stopped. Every night, telescopes tuned to its frequency hear it, steady as the tick of a clock. Its structure, decoded after years of dismissal, revealed what no natural process could produce: numbers, ordered and deliberate, counting down toward an end point in time. At first, scientists tried to fit the sequence to natural cycles, orbital alignments, even cosmic rhythms, but the numbers pointed not outward but forward. They were not describing the stars, they were describing us. A clock running out, the hands spinning down toward a date that grows closer each day. And as the countdown advanced, other phenomena accelerated with it. The flashes of light between Mars and Earth, like coded bursts, the malfunctions of machines, as if brushed aside by an unseen hand, the whispers of encounters beyond Earth's atmosphere, hidden by governments who fear panic. The closer the clock runs, the more intense these encounters have become. It is as though Mars is not simply counting down, but preparing. The carvings found in ancient ruins weigh heavily against the scientific arguments of coincidence. Civilizations with no telescopes, no spacecraft, no means of leaving their own horizon, carved depictions of a smaller red world beside our own. They recorded gods of fire descending from the sky, warnings of a silence that consumed a once living planet. In stone they etched blueprints, ratios, symbols that mirrored the formations we now know exist beneath Olympus Mons. They left behind warnings, whether myth, memory, or message, imploring future generations to take heed. And now, with rovers trundling across that very soil, with telescopes capturing the face of the red planet in unprecedented clarity, the warnings no longer read like fantasy. They read like history, and perhaps prophecy. Some scientists whisper what they dare not publish, that humanity is not entirely of Earth, that buried in our DNA is a fragment that should not exist, a sequence that breaks the pattern of evolution as we know it. It is as though something alien was spliced into us long ago, an edit beyond the reach of natural selection. Its presence is undeniable, yet inexplicable, and when mapped, when analyzed, the structure of this genetic anomaly mirrors the ratios found in Martian geology. A coincidence, or a signature, a seed placed within us, so that when the time came we would recognize it as theirs. If so, then we are not strangers to Mars. We are descendants, children of a world that died, carrying in our blood the memory of its civilization. But if that is true, why now? Why the countdown? If Mars seeded Earth with life, why would it prepare for what looks like an invasion? Unless we misunderstand, perhaps they do not come to conquer. Perhaps they come to reclaim, to awaken what they left behind, to gather their long-lost children who have strayed far from the memory of their origin. And yet, the evidence of surveillance, of disruption, of covert encounters suggests something less gentle. Satellites we never launched glimmer faintly against the darkness. Flashes of transmission like conversations between invisible machines. Military insiders whisper of craft intercepting our orbit, of engagements that never reach the public record. A silent war waged in the edges of our atmosphere, hidden from those who sleep peacefully below. If this is merely a return, why the secrecy? Why the manipulation of our machines, the hacking of our rovers, the control of our signals? Why the feeling of being watched, studied, measured? The question splits humanity into two camps. Some believe Mars prepares to attack, a civilization long hidden now ready to reclaim not only their past but their dominance. Others believe Mars never died at all, but evolved in ways we cannot comprehend, watching us grow, guiding us from the shadows. And now, with the countdown reaching its final marks, they prepare to emerge, not as conquerors but as parents, stepping into the lives of children who have forgotten them. Invasion or return, threat or salvation. The evidence points in both directions. The military encounters speak of conflict, objects that resist interception, that dart and weave beyond human capability. Rockets launched in secret, vanishing into silence, soldiers sworn to secrecy, telling only in whispers of battles waged above the clouds. The archaeological evidence speaks of knowledge shared, of warnings carved to endure through millennia. DNA speaks of kinship, of connection, and the countdown speaks of inevitability, a moment that will arrive whether we are ready or not. It is no longer a matter of belief. The pieces fit together too tightly, a signal too precise to be natural, underground structures too patterned to be coincidence, carvings too accurate to be myth, flashes too repeated to be chance, a sequence in our blood too deliberate to be random, and a countdown that grows louder in its silence every day. Something is coming. Something has always been coming. And yet, what awaits at zero remains hidden. Is it the arrival of ships, descending from the red horizon with technology that dwarfs our own? Is it the activation of systems long buried, rising from beneath Martian soil in a spectacle of awakening? Is it the triggering of something already on Earth, seeded here eons ago, waiting for the precise moment to awaken? Or is it none of these? Could it be something stranger still, something beyond our language, beyond our imagining? For centuries, humanity has wondered whether we are alone. The pieces we now hold suggest the answer is more complicated. We may not be alone, but neither may we be entirely ourselves. If our DNA carries their touch, if our myths echo their warnings, if our technology falters under their gaze, then perhaps the line between us and them has never been as clear as we believed. Perhaps the invasion we fear is not from without, but from within, a reawakening of what we have always been, hidden in ourselves, waiting for the clock to strike. The countdown is almost complete. The signals persist. The shadows beneath Olympus Mons remain silent. But silence is not absence. It is anticipation. The rovers malfunction at the edges of forbidden zones, as if trespassing on ground claimed by others. The flashes in orbit continue, like eyes blinking in the dark, watching, waiting. And on Earth, whispers spread among those who have seen, who have read, who have connected the pieces. Governments deny. Scientists retreat, but the evidence does not vanish. It grows layer upon layer, pointing to one truth. The question is no longer whether Mars hides a civilization. The question is what that civilization wants: to erase us, to reclaim us, to warn us, or to welcome us home. The silence from Mars may be deliberate, the quiet before an arrival, or perhaps we have already been contacted, already been shaped, already been led toward a destiny we barely understand. The countdown ensures only one thing: the waiting will not last forever. And so humanity stands on the brink, gazing upward toward a red world that has always haunted our dreams. We have seen it as a desert, a graveyard, a symbol of death. But what if it is not a grave, but a cradle, a place where our story began, now calling us back as its final chapter nears? What if the invasion we fear is not an ending, but a return to where we truly belong? The pieces are all in place. The signal, the ruins, the vanished explorers, the carvings in stone, the disruptions of our machines, the genetic code within us, the satellites above us, and the countdown, always the countdown, ticking away in relentless precision. They were never fragments of separate mysteries. They were one truth, hidden in pieces, waiting to be assembled. And now that the picture is clear, there is no unseeing it. Time grows short. The numbers fall. The red planet waits. And soon, whether in fire or in welcome, whether in conquest or in reunion, the silence will break. Humanity will face the truth of Mars. An invasion, a return, or perhaps both at once. The clock is almost at zero.